who starts, who sits, and how to become the greatest of all time. This is the Fantasy GOAT.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Fantasy GOAT. That's Jason Feinberg. I'm Mike Davis. Let's tell you kids what's on the agenda for today. First of all, we got Ritchie from Full Time Fantasy. He's going to be live in the studio. He's got 3 or 4 guys you need to pick up from the waiver wire, so we're going to get to that a little later on. Plus, we have a GOATCAST with Sam Argier, and Jason and I are going to go head-to-head on GOAT lineup, of course, with a little bit of evisceration from Mariah Janos is going to, make sure she beats up our teams, of course. But first, we have joining us Dr. Nithin Natwa. He's the GOAT of doctors. There he is. He's at Fantasy Docs on social media. Dr. Nithin Natwa, day in, day out, you're dropping some great fantasy medical advice, so it's great to see you here. So let's start with this. Christian McCaffrey, he still hasn't taken the field this season. Jordan Mason is in his spot. A lot of fantasy managers are liking what he's doing. But what's the deal with CMC? Is he coming back anytime soon?
So initially he had that Achilles tendinopathy, which we know about, but I was under the impression that since it had been lingering, it hadn't been improving, that he had already undergone some of those regenerative treatments like platelet-rich plasma or stem cell injections. But then we just recently got news that he was flying to Germany. And the thing about Germany is that it's on the forefront of all the research for PRP injections and stem cell injections. And typically when you have an athlete who's suffering from a tendinopathy, who's taking a flight in the middle of the season to Germany, it typically indicates that they're going there for some of these regenerative treatments. But that pushes this timeline back by about 4 to 6 weeks, because I was under the impression that he had already had those injections, and those injections take about 1 to 2 months to start seeing some significant benefits from them. So I think this pushes him out till 9-10 in terms of his return, but who knows what kind of load they're going to put him with. They might just be trying to get him prepped for playoffs, and it might be a split with Mason. So with this new information, I'm honestly trying to trade him away.
For sure. We just had a guillotine draft, and I took Jordan Mason in with my first running back pick after realizing he is going to Germany. Yeah. Okay, but here's a guy that I kind of want to drop if I can, and that's Isaiah Pacheco with Kansas City. Should I keep him? What are the developments with him?
So there's a little bit of conflicting news on this. On that broadcast at the Sunday game, the sideline reporter mentioned that there was some ligament damage, and that goes contrary to all previous reports that said there was no ligament damage. So with that being said, maybe it was a slip up and maybe they misspoke. There might not be any ligament damage, but still a fibular repair with surgical plating is still going to take until week 8, week 9 for him to see a significant return. And then once again, we have that ramp up period. So even if there is no ligament damage, I'm also still trying to trade away Pacheco. But now we have this conflicting news that there might be ligament damage, and that worsens the outlook even more for me.
Right.
And it just seems like it's worse this year than every other year. All right, and lastly, Doc, we got a bunch of guys that are dealing with the whole concussion issue, concussion protocols and clearance. So let's bundle, Devontae Smith, Trey McBride, and Austin Eckler. I believe Eckler's even already out, and he's been ruled out for this weekend already. So let's talk about just those guys. What's the deal? How do we deal with our guys that are dealing with concussions?
Yeah, so concussions, it was a hot topic a couple years ago for those that were in the game long enough to remember Will Smith's concussion. There was a huge flare-up of evaluating NFL players for concussions, and then there was a point in time where we started seeing these players return within a week of suffering the concussion. But I think there's been some pretty notable players who have suffered some pretty significant concussion, showing that fencing response, like Tua I'm going to mess up his name, so I'm just going to say
Tua.
And I think they've taken a more conservative approach going forward. Neither Devontae Smith nor McBride has practiced. I don't expect to see them out this week. They have a 5-step recovery where they do symptom rest, then they ease them into just elevated heart rate exercises like going on a treadmill. Then they put them into sport-specific activity. Then they put them into a live game practice. And assuming they're able to tolerate all of that without any kind of significant elevation in symptoms, that's when they clear them for return to game. Usually it takes about a day per symptom clearance, though. So once they miss that first day of the week, it's pretty unlikely that they suit up if they had a concussion.
All right. Interesting stuff, yeah.
I don't know who your boys are going to be throwing to.
I know Philadelphia. We're in the dressing room. We're saying maybe no A.J. Brown, no Devontae Smith. It's maybe going to be another big week for Dallas Goedert.
Yeah.
We'll have to see what that's like. All right, Thanks, Doc. You're the best. Go follow @FantasyDocs on social media to keep up to date with all the latest fantasy injury news. Have a great weekend, Doc. We'll see you next week.
See ya.
All right, now let's get into a little of this or that. The 2 stud rookie wideouts, Jason. Who would you rather have for the rest of the season, Malik Nabers or Marvin Harrison Jr.?
I'm so glad I did this guillotine league because we just drafted on Tuesday. So we know so many different things than before the season began. I had the 11th pick. I could have taken either one, and I took Malik Nabers. So I think that answers that question.
Malik Nabers is doing historic things right now, Jason. I mean, he's already beaten out Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson when it comes to production for rookie wide receivers. The dude is just balling out. He got 18 targets in week 2, 12 in week 3. The guy's got already 20 receptions, 250 yards, and 3 TDs. So Daniel Jones, he's got to throw to somebody, and I think Malik Nabers is that dude.
Yeah, for sure. As opposed to Marvin Harrison Jr., who he's making the most of his targets, but he's not getting a lot of them.
Yes,
not
and
yet,
it's
at
all, and everything with Arizona is about rhythm. So we're going to be actually sticking with them because next up we got to talk about 2 Heisman winners that are squaring off this week in the desert. It's Kyler Murray or Jayden Daniels. I think, like I said, Arizona, it's all about being in a rhythm. We saw what Kyler looks like in Arizona when he's in a rhythm. We remember week 2 against the Rams. So I think, for him, it's all about ceiling, whereas Jayden Daniels, it's all about floor. Jayden Daniels hadn't thrown a touchdown until last week on Monday Night Football. Looked great. He's, throwing that pass down the sideline to Terry McLaurin. But I think at the end of the day, fantasy football is about ceiling. It's about, balling out. And I think, from a floor standpoint, Jayden's getting those rushing touchdowns, but I still believe Kyler is going to be back into MVP form throughout this season. What about you?
No, I got to say Daniels, because I think his ceiling is through the roof. I think he's just getting started. I think they finally are letting him pass, which they didn't in the first 2 weeks. And now what we saw on Monday Night Football, I think that's the real deal. I probably would go with him, but just a slight edge.
Okay, all right. I still need to see a little proof of the pudding. It's 1 week, okay? Jayden Daniels, he looks good. But Kyler Murray, there's something special about that guy. All right, and finally, a couple stud running backs. LA's Kyren Williams or New Orleans with Alvin Kamara. Who would you rather have for the rest of the season?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'd probably go with Kyren Williams just because we're already starting to get reports about Kamara not being 100%. And he is a little bit on the older side. I think Kyren Williams is a lot younger. So I'd probably go with the youth on that. They're both doing really well this season so far. I mean,
I'm bought in on Kamara, and I know the first 2 weeks for New Orleans, how do you even factor in the beatdown they put on Carolina and the beatdown that they even put on Dallas? But he's fully recovered now from that broken leg. Like last season, people were high on him. He was recovering from a broken leg, and everything that Clint Kubiak is doing there offensively, I know they were a little stunted last week with Philadelphia. They didn't look as great, but Kamara, man, he's a PPR monster.
It's pretty funny because we completely went different ways on all 3 of this or that. And we did not talk about this beforehand.
No.
It's not like I'd be like, oh, I'll take the other side. So that's good.
They're
very healthy.
We're just in disagreement naturally. So it sounds like a Gilbert O'Sullivan song, or Alone Again Naturally. Something.
Too many sad songs for that guy.
Like that, All right, guys, coming up on the Fantasy GOAT, there she is. Mariah Janos of Beat the Odds joins us in studio for the GOAT lineup. Week 2, 2-minute drill. So we're going to see what she has to say, and I'm already clenching my butt cheeks. I'm scared.
I'm worse. All right, it is time for the 2-minute drill.
Yes, I'm thrilled.
You look it.
I look it, It's the segment where Mariah Janos from Beat the Odds joins the show to basically eviscerate our results from last week's GOAT lineup. But
it's like, how can somebody be good looking like this and yet we dread having her on the show?
That's what I was just saying about, you were saying Kingsbury during the break. You were all excited about him in Washington. I'm like, he's too good looking. I don't trust him. Same thing with Mariah. So Mariah, rip us the shreds.
Well, that was so nice, I think. Look, This is great because growing up, you know, teachers send out the report cards. We dreaded giving them to our parents. Now I'm on the other side of it as an adult, and I'm living for it. But the shockers kept coming in week 3, you guys. Again, those underdogs biting hard, and the fantasy production goes hand in hand with that. So let's take a look at how you guys did. Mike, you had quarterback Jalen Hurts for 15.5 points, running back Devon Achane 8.8 points, wide receiver Jamar Chase 32.8 points. Big boy cleaned up there. And tight end Travis Kelce 7 points for a total of 64.1. As for Jason, you had quarterback Baker Mayfield with just 9 points, running back Zach Charbonnet with 25.7, and wide receiver J-Mo Williams 1.2.
The hell happened there?
I know, that was
Tight
bad.
end Mike Gesicki 8.7 for a total of 44.6 points. So congratulations, Mike. You get your first win of the season. Gold star for you, buddy.
Thank you.
But let's still look at what you got there. So Achane, typically a safe bet, especially without a true quarterback down in Miami. You know, this team is going to rely heavy on the run game. However, if I can predict that they're going to rely on the run game, so can their opponents, and thus a low production week for Achane. As for Travis Kelce, good to see him finally get in the mix a bit. I know people were complaining about his lack of targets, but he's a prime example of a good player not being great for fantasy at this point because defenses are all over him. You know he's the go-to guy to get Mahomes out of any sort of jam, so they're covering him all over. 7 points, though, pretty decent for a tight end at this point in the season because their production hasn't been great through the first few weeks. But as for Jason, I hate to rip on he's present. I hate to rip on Baker Mayfield because I feel like he's truly found his home in Tampa Bay. But recording just 1 touchdown against a Denver defense that was ranked 30th in the league last season. I know that they made offseason adjustments, but it's still Denver. Tampa has an array of weapons. I know Godwin's now questionable, but still, that was pretty disappointing because I was really riding hard for Baker Mayfield there. You also chose J-Mo Williams.
Wow.
This really hurt you, Jason.
Yeah, it sure did.
He had the worst showing of his 2024 campaign, catching 1 of 3 targets for 9 yards, and the one time he tried to rush, it was for -7 yards.
You know, Jason, we both love, I love Jameson and Ginger. You love
yeah.
Jack and Ginger.
Yeah.
He was kind of like Ginger with no J-Mo. That's basically how he played.
I fully should have went Marianne, to tell you the truth, at this point.
Really?
As opposed to Ginger.
Is this a Gilligan's Island
reference? Yeah, it's a Gilligan's Island reference.
I was a big Ginger was the hotter one, though, right? I mean,
that's why there's the question.
Now we're getting off topic.
All right, go.
The teacher's
He's
here to
always
really
a Marianne guy. I'm a Ginger guy. You know.
Either way, Mike, congratulations on your win. I don't know if it'll last too long. Both of you have a lot of room for improvement, but keep up the good work. I'll give you guys, above average grades for this week.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, we appreciate it.
I'm glad J-Mo's out of my. I can't use him again.
Marianne's kind of like the Ty Chandler of fantasy, and A-Chan is like the Ginger of Gilligan's Island. All right.
A lot of people go with Marianne. I got to tell you.
All right. Anyway. Coming up, Ian Ritchie of Full-Time Fantasy. He's going to join us next. He's got the waiver wire additions you need.
He killed it, by the way, last week.
He really did. He's going to be here with some great advice. You don't want to miss it. It's the only thing we like to watch more than football, Jason, the waiver wire. And of course, it's one of the keys to fantasy football success. Here to help us out is the owner and founder of Full-Time Fantasy and all-around fantasy football genius. That's Ian Ritchie.
Yeah, and great to have you in studio. We always love when you're here live with us. All right, tell us the first guy we need to target on the waiver wire. Your picks were hot last week, so it's good suggestions.
First guy I go with is Darnell Mooney.
Okay.
I think Darnell Mooney has really improved his chemistry, obviously, with Kirk Cousins in Atlanta. First week he had 1 catch, second week he had 3 catches, and last week he had 8 for 66. He's definitely picking up the pace. The offense is going well there. He's a great guy to add to your roster if he's not rostered in your league now.
I like that one play where he just yanked his defender out of the way and ran in for the touchdown.
Yeah.
That was
He's
good.
a sneaky good pick. All right, so next, Ian, a guy I'm big on, Bucky Irving. Why do you love him so much? I have him in a few leagues.
Yeah, you just watch the game, and the eye test tells you everything you need to know. He's a lot better than Rachaad White. It doesn't mean Rachaad White's not going to continue to have a role in the offense, but Bucky Irving is more explosive, and he's a lot better of a running back. He was drafted this year in the 4th round, which isn't a huge draft capital for them, and he's only 5'9", so he's not going to get a bell cow role.
Right.
But as the season progresses, he's a guy that's going to take over that job more and more, and I think in a PPR league especially, somebody you'll be able to count on down the stretch.
Okay, I just cut Zeke Elliott because I'm all in on now Rico Dowdle. Is that who you're thinking too?
Absolutely. Again, it's a situation where when you watch the game, it's no question who the better player is.
Yeah.
It might take a little bit longer to be in your lineup than picking him up right now. But getting him now for the future is what you want to do because he's definitely taken over that job. Zeke looks old.
Yeah.
He's not catching passes like he did last year in New England, and Rico Dowdle is catching passes, and he looks a lot more explosive.
All right, real quickly, one more guy you got for us. You've been telling me about this since you walked in the door today. Tell me, who's this last guy?
Yeah, a little sneaky, Roshan Johnson with the DeAndre Swift has done a really poor job. He came in last week, did a great job, and according to our sources with the he's really earned a big role coming forward. There's a chance he starts this weekend.
Okay.
So look for him to really take over a big role in that backfield.
All right, there you
I
go.
like it. Good
Ian
stuff.
Ritchie, always great stuff. Make sure you go check out Full-Time Fantasy. But now we got to head over to Sam Argier with our Week 4 GOATCAST.
Yeah, Mike and Jason, all eyes in the weather world have been focused on Hurricane Helene. We'll talk about where some lingering impacts from Helene will be possible in your Week 4 GOATCAST straight ahead.
All right, welcome back to the Fantasy Goat. Now it's time for GOATCAST.
Yeah, let's get over to Sam Argier where things are getting a little more hectic in weather.
Yeah, a big week. Hurricane Helene has been the big weather story this week, and there could be some lingering impacts on Sunday. Now, that will no longer be a hurricane on Sunday, but still many of the outdoor games have that chance for some rain. Now, with it being late September, we're keeping the really, really cold air away for the games on Sunday. But some rain a distinct possibility. So here's the way the weather map is looking for the late morning, early afternoon games, depending on your time zone. Now, Tampa is going to be an area we're watching closely with Helene making landfall near Tampa this week. Still some lingering showers at 84, and that field could certainly still be very soggy. Another spot will be Carolina, another outdoor game against Cincinnati, 79, with some showers in the forecast, and even rain for areas like Chicago against LA at 68. Green Bay, not too cold for that big division rival. Minnesota coming to town at 71. Then a slight chance of a shower up in New York for Denver. Beautiful weather in the Bay Area for San Francisco and New England. Will be in the low 80s there, so no weather worries for that game outside. And then the Sunday night game is going to be Baltimore versus Buffalo, and some showers are in the forecast for the Baltimore area. 2 Monday night games, one inside Detroit and Seattle. That'll be a good one, but it's indoors. And then Miami versus Tennessee, shower chance at 82 degrees. Now, it's important to mention that we are recording this forecast with all of you. We're recording the show on Thursday afternoon as Hurricane Helene is approaching the Florida coast right now. We're expecting it to make landfall Thursday night, so by the time many people watch this, we'll already be talking about the impacts. 2 cities I'm really going to keep an eye on, as I mentioned, Tampa Bay. They're hosting on Sunday. That's outdoors, so the field could have impacts. But Atlanta, it's an indoor game. But Atlanta is going to see some very strong wind, flash flooding of very high potential as the remnants from Helene move through. So there could be power outages for some days for people trying to get to that game. And we're just going to have to monitor the NFL. I don't know if they would make a call to maybe cancel the game or postpone the game. But those are the 2 big cities we're watching that will have the biggest impact.
But at the very least, maybe it's not as much of a home field advantage if fans can't get to the dome and do all that stuff, so
they could move. I mean, we've seen games get moved to a Tuesday, and has a game been moved to a Wednesday? That's getting late because then they got to prepare for the next week. So yeah, probably Tuesday would be the last chance, but hopefully it's all good.
Yeah, and for all of our viewers in that part of the country dealing with Helene, we're wishing them all the best.
Yeah,
for sure.
All right. Sam, GOATCAST, you're the GOAT. And that's the GOATCAST. We appreciate it. Guys, we'll be right back after a short break. Next up, it's time for GOAT Lineup.
This is the Fantasy Goat.
Well, it's the best time of the show. It's GOAT Lineup time. So here's how GOAT Lineup works for all you kids at home. Each and every week, Jason and I face off head-to-head with standard style scoring. We select 1 quarterback, 1 running back, 1 wide receiver, and lastly, 1 tight end. But here's the catch. We can really only use every player 1 time a year. So there's like that survivor element to this whole baby. But currently, Jason, you are leading me with a record of 2-1, so it's a big week for me to try to get back at a 500 even with you. So we'll see what happens. But Jason, let's take a look at your lineup right now.
All right, kind of like what happened when I took Baker Mayfield thinking he was the hot hand. Let's try it again, but this time with Andy Dalton in Carolina. He has definitely sparked up that team, threw for over 300 yards last week against Vegas. And so I don't see why he can't do it against Cincinnati, whose defense has been pretty porous. I'm going to go with Najee Harris only because Jaylen Warren is probably not playing.
Right.
He'll get a bulk of the carries. Of course, Cordero Patterson's going to come in and ruin everything, but that happens every year.
That's Arthur Smith's secret ingredient.
Exactly. Wide receiver, again, Tank Dell not playing, so Nico Collins will get a big share, like always. And then same with tight end in Philadelphia. Who else is Jalen Hurts going to throw the ball to other than Dallas Goedert? And maybe Barkley a little bit.
You know what? Some sneaky strategy there. Yeah. I like it, Jason. All right, so here's my lineup for week 3 as I try to match you, my man. So quarterback, I'm going to go Joe Burrow versus Carolina. Listen, I mean, he looked better. The team looked better. Chase looked better on Monday Night Football. They're scoring a bit more points, but they got to do something against Carolina this week.
And we'll be head-to-head because they have Dalton.
Right, so it's do or die. So Burrow, you got to do this. You got to do your thing, my man. Next, running back. I'm going to do Travis Etienne with Jacksonville as they go up against Houston. Listen, division game. Everything looks dreadful there. Etienne is talented. They got to commit to the run game a little bit and help everybody out there in terms of the passing game with Trevor Lawrence. So Etienne, commit to the run game, get him the ball. Earlier in the season, Tank Bigsby looked like he might be a factor. Not as much anymore. Anyway, wide receiver, we got Amari Cooper as he goes up against Vegas, old team. And lastly, Sam Laporta as tight end. So that's where we go. We'll see what happens, Jason. It's going to be interesting stuff this week.
Yeah, absolutely. We will see you with results next week.
All right, guys. Good luck this week. We'll see you next time.